She entered the arena and dropped her weapon. The arena was louder than thunder. 10,000 aliens sat in the steel stands. They laughed, cheered, and shouted insults. Above them, giant screens showed the face of the next fighter, a human girl. She looked small, thin, no armor, no scars, just a dark outfit and calm eyes. "She's a joke," one alien said. "Humans are weak," another laughed. "This will be fast." Inside the waiting tunnel, the girl stood alone. A heavy metal gate blocked her view of the arena. Behind her, a guard pushed a weapon into her hand. "Try to make it interesting," the guard smirked. She said nothing, just walked. The gate opened with a loud screech. Bright lights hit her face. Hot wind blew dust across the cracked ground. It smelled of oil, sweat, and blood. She stepped forward slowly. Above her, crowds screamed louder. Cameras zoomed in. She walked to the center of the arena. Across from her stood 5 alien warriors, each twice her size. Claws, horns, shining armor, champions from 5 deadly species. They were handpicked to make the crowd happy. They were killers, and they were smiling. One stepped forward, dragging a blade taller than the girl. "Your kind should have stayed on. Earth," he growled. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the weapon in her hand. It was sharp, clean, made for slicing. She held it for a moment, then dropped it. The sound was small, just a clang against stone, but the silence it caused was huge. The arena froze. Then the laughter came. She gave up. She's scared. She'll run. But she didn't run. She stood still. No weapon, no shield, just calm eyes and slow breath. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. "Begin!" The first alien charged. He was fast, armored, angry. The girl didn't move. Not until he swung. She ducked, spun low. Her foot snapped into his knee with a loud crack. The alien screamed. She grabbed his blade midair, turned it, and slammed the blunt end into his chest. He dropped. The crowd gasped. She was already moving. The second alien rushed from behind. She bent backward, avoiding the strike by inches. Then she rolled forward and kicked upward, straight into his jaw. Teeth flew. The third didn't wait. He roared and charged. She slid under him, jumped to her feet, elbowed him in the throat. He fell choking. 12 seconds had passed. 2 aliens left. They looked at her now with different eyes, not anger, not pride, fear. The fourth raised a blaster. She kicked a metal piece from the ground. It flew into his hand and knocked the weapon away. She reached him in 1 second, a sharp twist. A loud pop. He dropped. Now, only one remained. He took a step back, shaking. The girl didn't speak. She simply stared. He dropped his weapon. The arena was silent. He turned and ran. The screens went dark. The crowd didn't cheer. They couldn't speak. 14 seconds. 5 champions defeated. And the girl? She just stood there. Dust in her hair. Blood on her knuckles. Her weapon still lying where she dropped it. Cameras caught her face as she turned to leave. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't angry. She just looked finished. Like this was only the beginning. The gate opened. She walked out. And the arena was completely empty. Not a single fighter stood. Not a single voice spoke. Only one word remained, whispered across the galaxy. Human. Who was she? And why? Did she smile? The video spread like fire. Every corner of the galaxy, spaceports, control rooms, colonies, was replaying the same 14 seconds. A small human girl, 5 alien champions, no weapons, no mercy, and at the start of it all, she had smiled. It was not a big smile, not loud, not joyful. It was the kind of smile that made soldiers feel cold, as if she already knew how it would end. Alien generals held emergency meetings. "She's trained," one said. "Enhanced, maybe." "No," replied another. "That was no enhancement. That was something else." Others weren't so calm. She's a threat, a weapon, she needs to be erased. But how do you erase something you can't understand? The arena officials tried to pull her record, but they found nothing. No name, no ID, no home planet listed, just a blank file, and a line written in an old Terran language. She fights for what you buried. That same day, deep in a hidden lab, a team of alien scientists watched her footage in slow motion, frame by frame. Every movement was perfect. No wasted steps, no hesitation, no fear. She's not reacting, the head researcher said. She's planning. Every strike is planned 3 seconds ahead. She knew their weak spots. She read their attacks before they started. Who trained her? Like this? Then one intern, a quiet one, pointed at something strange. Look at her eyes, he said. They zoomed in. Her pupils were shrinking and expanding, rapidly. Not fear, calculations. She wasn't just fighting. She was measuring. Like the
arena was a test, like they were not enemies.
But targets. Suddenly a new file appeared on the lab screen. No one knew where it came from. It played a short video. Old, blurry. It showed a small colony, human-built, far from Earth. Then fire, explosions, screams, alien soldiers burning homes. Little girl running through smoke, her face dirty, her hands shaking. But her eyes, the same. Cold, focused, watching everything. That girl had survived. And now, she was back. The lab went silent. Then their screens turned black. A message blinked 3 times. You made this. Back on the arena station, security was ready to escort the human girl back into holding. But when they opened her cell, it was empty. No broken locks, no holes, no sounds. Just one thing left behind. Scratched into the metal wall. Try. Alarms rang. Search ships launched. Patrols scanned every exit point. She was gone. Vanished without a trace. But then, strange things started happening. One by one, those who cheered the loudest at the arena began to disappear. A guard, a council member, a weapons dealer. No one saw her come. No one saw her leave. But at every scene, one thing was found, a small stone, black, smooth, with one symbol carved deep into it, H. For human. Now the galaxy was no longer laughing, it was watching closely, because the girl who had once smiled in the arena was now out there, unseen, and she wasn't finished. They called for her execution, but she vanished. Panic spread like poison. After the arena incident, the Council of Systems gathered in emergency session. She humiliated our strongest warriors. She broke the code of peace. She must be executed. The vote was fast. Unanimous. Terminate the human girl. They sent bounty hunters, trained killers, silent shadows who never failed. They were promised riches, power, glory. They only had to find one girl. She had no army, no ship, no known location. But she had one thing the galaxy didn't understand, a reason. On the first day, a hunter followed, her signal to an abandoned mine. Only his boots were found. On the second day, a team entered a colony where she had been spotted. The entire team disappeared. On the third day, a high-ranking general who ordered her death was found hanging upside down from his own war statue. No blood, no wounds, just a note pinned to his chest. You started it. Still, the council pushed harder. They called for full military scans. Every ship, every station, every satellite. But the more they searched, the more systems began to shut down. Surveillance failed. Patrols went dark. Everywhere she had passed, systems glitched, cameras died, guards forgot. It was like she became part of the shadows. Then came the broadcast. One screen lit up across the galaxy. It showed her, standing on a rooftop. Rain falling, city burning behind her. She looked into the camera, and for the first time, she spoke. I am not hiding. You are. She stepped forward. The screen went black. No signal trace, no location, nothing. But the message was clear. She had full control. Now, not over weapons, not over ships, but over fear. One council leader whispered in his chamber, "She's just one girl." A voice replied from the shadows. She was, not anymore. Because now she had help. Others. Quiet humans from forgotten colonies. Outcasts, survivors. They were rising, and each carried the same mark, an empty hand. The symbol of the girl who dropped her weapon, now seen as something more, not surrender, but warning, not peace, but promise. By the end of the week, the bounty was withdrawn. The council deleted the kill order. They called it a mistake. But the galaxy knew the truth. They didn't cancel the hunt out of mercy. They did it out of fear, because she was no longer being chased. She was chasing them. She was just a cadet, but command took notice. Across the stars, most cadets were invisible. They trained. They followed orders. They studied the past, but not her. She didn't speak much. She didn't ask questions. She didn't laugh or argue like the others. Yet in just 6 seconds, the entire academy saw her differently. And far above the academy, someone else was watching. In a dark control room orbiting the defense planet Karis 9, 4 high-ranking officers stood around a large holotable. Footage of her simulation played, again, and again, and again. One admiral leaned forward, eyes sharp. She predicted a full flank collapse without running a single model. She didn't guess. She knew. A gray-skinned strategist crossed his arms. Could be luck. Some Earth cadets are clever, sure. But this is, precision. The youngest of the officers, a woman from the Navy's Shadow Branch, simply tapped the screen. She's from a Deathworld. That's not strategy. That's instinct. An hour later, the Academy's head instructor received a message marked Ultra-Level Clearance. Subject: Human Cadet 941 Alpha. Temporarily transfer her from standard training. We want to see what she can do when she isn't holding back. The next morning, she didn't show up to class. Her seat was empty. The cadets whispered. Some thought she quit. Others believed she was expelled, but 2 instructors knew the truth. She had been pulled out of the system, not punished, recruited. She was brought to a different building, one few cadets ever saw. No banners, no windows. Inside, the halls were quiet, clean, cold. She was led to a room with no screens, only 5 officers sitting at a round table. They didn't smile. They didn't offer her a seat. One of them simply asked, "Do you know why you're here?" She looked at them, her face calm as always. "Yes." Another leaned forward. "You see things we don't. You understand battle in ways even our veterans can't explain." "Why?" she answered softly. "Because I had no choice." Then she spoke. About the ambush on her colony, the war that wasn't called a war, the nights. She counted breath to stay hidden. How she learned where ships would land before she heard them. How she could read enemy movement like body language. "I didn't read books," she said. "I read moments." They were silent for a long time. Then the admiral finally said, "You're not here for school anymore." He slid a data pad across the table. "Tell us what's wrong with this." She looked down. It was a live tactical plan. Real ships, real battle, real lives. She analyzed it for 10 seconds, then she pointed. "Right here. They're being funneled into a death zone. You've got a traitor feeding them coordinates." They all stared. One officer stood up. "That's a heavy claim." She looked at him with cold eyes. "I'm not guessing." Later that night, they investigated the officer she identified in the plan. And she was right. He had been leaking data for months. If the mission had launched as planned, hundreds would have died. Word spread. A cadet had found what intelligence teams had missed. Whispers began to circle through the upper fleets. Who is she? What's her rank? Why is Earth training people like this? Back at the academy, the students still didn't know where she went. Her name was removed from class lists. Her bunk cleared. But in a deep war lab beneath the ground, she was now seated with officers 3 times her age. And correcting them, they didn't argue. They listened. One night, a senior fleet commander visited her alone. He stood at the window while she reviewed plans. "You're not afraid of us," he said. "No." "Why?" She looked up. "Because I'm not here to impress you." He smiled faintly. "Then why are you here?" Her answer was simple. To make sure fewer people die stupidly. The next morning, she was given her own simulation room. Inside it, a full holographic war space. Live data from outer systems. Open access to enemy movement. She didn't ask permission. She just worked. Quietly. Perfectly. Some called her dangerous. Others called her a genius. But none denied what was now clear. She was no longer just a cadet. She was becoming something more. A strategist the galaxy had never seen before, and far beyond the stars. Those planning the next war had started to notice. The room was silent. All eyes were on her, not just cadets now, not just instructors. This time, generals watched, and they weren't watching to teach. They were watching to see if she could survive. Because today's test wasn't a simulation, not anymore. In the heart of the military training facility, a large black door slid open. Behind it was Training Zone Theta, restricted, dangerous, and never used for cadets. She stepped in, her boots echoing on the metal floor. No fear in her eyes, no hesitation in her walk. Above her, hidden behind thick glass and layers of steel, officials from across the systems watched. Fleet leaders, Shadow Branch commanders, even one silent figure wearing the dark uniform of the Galactic Intelligence Bureau. They wanted answers. What is she? And now? They were about to find out. A loud voice echoed across the room. "You have 10 minutes to survive." The floor began to shift. Walls rose. Ceiling lights dimmed. The test area transformed into a war zone. Broken buildings, smoke vents, metal debris, like a real battlefield. Then came the drones. Fast, armored, brutal. Each one designed to hunt, trap, and eliminate. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She walked straight toward the first one. It fired. She ducked. Not because she saw it coming, but because she felt it. Up in the control room, an officer leaned forward. She moved before the shot was fired. Another whispered, "She reads combat like it's music." More drones dropped in. 6, 8, 10. She still had no weapon, just her speed, her senses, her mind. She rolled under fire, used metal scraps to deflect blasts, turned enemy shots against each other, and then she vanished. The drones stopped. Scanning. No target. Until, crash, a drone's head flew through the air. Then another. She was dismantling them from behind one by one. And she wasn't smiling. She wasn't enjoying it. She was focused. Calculating. Like war was just a puzzle. Inside the control room, someone finally broke the silence. "This is not normal. No one trains like this." A quiet voice responded. She was never trained. She survived. Time passed. The 10 minutes were nearly over. Only 2 drones remained. They launched together, high-speed mode, full weapon systems. But she was faster. She sprinted toward a wall, jumped, kicked off midair, flipped over both drones, grabbed one's cannon, ripped it off and landed in a perfect crouch. 1 second later, boom. She fired. Both drones exploded, smoke filled the arena, and she walked out, coughing once, then stood tall in the silence. Everyone watching stood frozen. One general leaned toward the microphone. "Why didn't you run?" Her voice came through calm and flat. "Running doesn't fix broken plans." "What do you mean?" She looked up. "Your battle map from last week. Zone Delta 4? It's a trap. You're marching into it. You won't survive." The room went. Still, that battle wasn't public. She shouldn't have known. But she did. And she was right. Again. 2 hours later, the Delta IV mission was canceled, and every officer left that room knowing one thing. This girl was no longer just an anomaly. She was a warning. Back in her quarters, she sat alone. No medals, no praise, just silence, until a new message blinked on her screen. Urgent priority. Come to Dock Bay 17. Now. She didn't ask why. She just got up and walked. At the bay, a sleek black dropship waited. No markings, no pilot. The ramp opened slowly. Voice came from inside, deep and unfamiliar. Step in. You've been selected. By who? She asked. The voice replied, by those who fight wars before they begin. The ship moved without sound. No engines, no crew. Just her, and silence. The stars outside shifted too fast. Lights bent, colors changed. She wasn't in normal space anymore. This was slip space, the hidden path between systems used only by the most secret fleets. She sat quietly, her hands resting on her knees, eyes watching the strange light outside. She didn't ask questions. She knew something was coming, and it was big. After what felt like hours, the ship stopped. The ramp lowered. What she saw was not a base, not a city. It was an ancient station floating above a dying star. The metal looked older than any known tech. Black, rusted, covered in symbols no one taught in the academy. Waiting outside were 4 figures in black suits. No faces, just silver masks. One of them nodded. Come. They led her through long, dark halls. The deeper they went, the colder the air felt, until they reached a single room with a large table. A hologram floated above it, a galaxy map. And something strange, a black void spreading from the outer rim, eating systems silently. A voice spoke behind her, low, controlled. This is not an invasion. She turned. It was a man, older, standing in the shadows. This is erasure. Something is removing entire systems. No war, no wreckage, just gone. She blinked. Why me? He stared at her. You saw what was coming before your instructors. You corrected battle maps with your eyes closed. You tore apart AI drones with your hands. He stepped forward. You were born on a death world, raised where gravity breaks bones and air burns lungs. And still, you walked into the arena and made it empty. The table shifted. New images appeared. A planet. Strange readings. We found something buried in this system, he said. No one else can get close. Ships melt, mines collapse. She looked closer. The readings were wrong, but they felt familiar. Like her dreams. She nodded once. I'll go. They gave her a suit. Not armor, not weapons, but a deep black suit with neural links, layered with smart fibers that changed based on threat. She wore it like it belonged to her. 3 days later, she stood inside a dark ship flying toward the unknown world. The crew watched her like she was a myth. Whispers followed her. She doesn't blink. She beat the test drones and with no weapons. She sees the future. They reached orbit and saw it, a planet completely black, like it swallowed light. No oceans, no cities, only a mountain shaped like a spike, reaching into the clouds, the Yao. Crew refused to go lower, but she didn't hesitate. She entered the drop pod and strapped in. The pod launched. Fire surrounded it as it dropped, but she didn't scream. She closed her eyes and waited. The pod hit the ground hard. The door burst open. She stepped out into complete silence. No wind, no birds, no sky, only the mountain ahead. Each step echoed like thunder. As she climbed, strange whispers filled her ears. You're too late. She will never stop it. Turn back. But she didn't turn. Not once. She reached the top, and there it was. A monolith, taller than any structure she'd ever seen, pulsing, alive, waiting. She stepped forward, and it opened. Not A door, not a gate. A memory. Flashing images hit her eyes. Wars, empires burning. Humans, not dying, but watching. Then one girl, alone. Always alone. She realized what she was seeing. Her future, or maybe her past. Suddenly, the monolith whispered, "What do you see, Deathworlder?" She replied without fear, "Everything." And it answered, "Then choose." The world around her didn't break apart. It changed. The mountain disappeared. The monolith melted into stars. Now she stood in space, no suit, no ship, just herself, floating before a great wall of darkness that stretched endlessly. It was not a dream. It was realer than real. A voice echoed, not through the air but through her bones. "This choice is not just for you, but for everything." She could feel it now. A presence behind that darkness, a sleeping force. Older than time, stronger than war. It had erased thousands of stars already. Not because of hate, but because it was waking up. And the galaxy had no idea. Then she saw two images in her mind. One was fire. Millions of warships uniting under her command, fighting. The darkness with everything humanity and its allies had. The second was silence. She stood alone, walking into the dark void, merging with it, binding it again, but vanishing forever. Two paths. No return. The voice spoke again. "The galaxy believes in empires, but empires fall. It believes in weapons, but weapons rust. What will you choose?" She stood still, then spoke slowly. "I'll go into the void." Silence. Then, the stars blinked, one by one, and the voice answered, "So be it." Suddenly, everything collapsed inward. Her body didn't move, but she felt herself being stretched, mind, memory, soul, all pulled like threads into the black. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She became still. When she opened her eyes again, she wasn't the same. She stood in the middle of a human command center. Admirals stared at her, confused. She had just vanished for hours, but for her, it had been years. Her eyes glowed faintly. Her voice was deeper now, layered with something not human. She walked forward and touched the war map. Lines of defense rearranged themselves. "Move these ships," she said. "Bring the fleets from Orion and shift the planetary shields. The first wave begins in 23 hours. One officer stammered. "First wave of what?" She looked up. The darkness. Every human fleet, every ally, every station, every battle-ready soldier was soon under her new command, and no one challenged it, because her predictions were too accurate, because her gaze was too calm, and because the stars had started going. Dark. Entire systems stopped responding. No explosions, no survivors, just gone. Some said it was sabotage, others feared a new weapon. Only she knew the truth. She had held the enemy inside her for 1 second, long enough to understand its rules. Now she didn't sleep. She didn't eat. She walked through war rooms like a shadow, correcting plans before mistakes happened, ordering silent evacuations before the planets even knew they were in danger. Some whispered that she was no longer human. Some called her a god, but those closest to her called her by one name: the last strategist. One night alone, she stood on the balcony of the High Command Tower. A young soldier approached quietly. He looked nervous. "Ma'am, you said the first wave begins soon. What happens after that?" She turned toward the stars and whispered, "Then, the real enemy speaks." The stars had gone quiet. Entire sectors no longer sent signals. No light, no data, no escape pods. Just gone. But the girl was ready. She stood in the war room alone, staring at the center of the map, a slowly growing black circle, devouring stars system by system. It wasn't a weapon, it wasn't an army, it was something else. Behind her, the generals stood silently. No one dared interrupt. She had moved fleets days before the attack started. She had warned them. She had saved worlds. But, no. Her hand hovered above the map, not to move ships, but to call. She pressed 2 fingers into the glowing surface. Her voice, calm and strong, echoed through every command post, every warship, every listening station across the galaxy. It hears us now, but it doesn't understand yet. I'll make it understand. And then, she did something no human or alien had dared. She opened a channel to the darkness. At first, there was no response, only static, silence. Then, a hum, a vibration, like space itself was speaking. Then came the voice, cold, ancient, not made of words but meaning. Why do you call the end? She stood tall. Because we are not done yet. The darkness paused. Your kind is small. You do not know what you speak to. She looked at the center of the map. The growing black zone trembled, only slightly, but it did. We are small, she said. But we remember, we adapt, we survive, you erase, we resist. And then, she said it, a name. Not a name taught in school, not one known in the galaxy, a name that didn't exist in any database, a name she had heard when she had been inside the Yo. Void. I know what you are, she whispered. You are Nulliska. The unmaking. The war room froze. The black hole on the map stopped growing. The voice changed. It sounded confused. You remembered the first name, the one before stars, before time. She nodded once. You are not new. You are forgotten, and I brought you back, so I can end you properly. Across the galaxy, fleets armed weapons. Every screen, lit up with commands from one central point, her. She had written the code herself. She had changed formation orders for thousands of ships. Her plan wasn't war, it was containment. She was going to trap the darkness. One system at a time, she pulled fleets back. She let Nulliska move deeper, not knowing that it was being led into a cage. The cage was invisible, built from collapsed matter, artificial gravity wells, and neutron-laced barriers. A trap humans had prepared in silence. And now, she closed it. The map flashed red, then white. The void twisted. The stars shook. Even the alien commanders cried out as reality distorted around the trap zone. And then, silence. In the war room, alarms shut off. No more black circle. The stars returned. Nulliska was gone. She fell to her knees. Blood ran from her nose. Her skin looked pale. But she smiled. They had done it. Not with brute force, but with strategy, with memory, with her. They carried her out like a hero. But she refused medals. She only said one thing before disappearing. I was never the strongest. Just the one who listened long enough to know what to say. Years later, children in the galaxy would learn about the girl who spoke to the darkness and lived. They'd ask what her name was, but no one knew. All they remembered was what she did, and the title carved into the monument beneath the stars. She sat in silence, then saved us all. The end.